Yeah.
Welcome to this episode of Small Bike Stuff Podcast. This is take 2 because my internet just dropped out. I'm not going to lie. I did this cool thing where I walked away. It looked cool. Yeah. But hey, it's fine. It's fine. We'll just kick back into it.
Maybe we can just throw a flashback to that right up here.
Yeah. And, oh no, I think I've lost my internet. Lucky it's happened now. Yeah. And that was it. So, this is the podcast where we explore everything to do with small bikes. And today I'm talking with Dana. I always talk with Dana. Dana's living in Bangkok. And we are going to be discussing something that's near and dear to my heart, and that is adventures. Adventures on small bikes. So I guess the first place to start is what do you consider to be an adventure? Like, you know, going down to the shops to get a bottle of milk and come home again doesn't quite count unless you go...
Depends where you live.
Yeah, it does. It does. That's very true. If you live 2 hours from the nearest shop, then it's definitely an adventure. But for me, I generally consider an adventure to be something where there is more than one day involved. You are going to, you know, you can do a one-day adventure. That's true. But generally, it's something where you're going to be spending a couple of nights with your camping, with your staying in cheap accommodation, whether you're living it up and staying in 5-star accommodation and you're riding the most expensive motorcycle in the world. That's still an adventure. So for me, it's prolonged travel on a motorbike. That's what I consider to be a motorcycle adventure.
Yeah, for me, I mean, you can do a one-day. I've done plenty of one-day things where I get out and, you know, I think it's more the mindset for the ride. Like, am I willing to turn off the beaten path for a little bit and navigate some unknowns? And that's adventurous. To the same end, right? Planning a big trip and hitting the road, that's always a big adventure. I mean, it really depends. And like I said, if the nearest shop is 2 hours from you and you've got to, cross some sketchy bridges and, forge a river just to get there, then that's a hell of an adventure. If you get milk every day, if that were the case, 4 hours of riding, sure.
Yeah, why not?
Twist my arm. But
why have we got 5 full bottles of milk at home, Dana?
I'm lactose intolerant. I can't even drink it, but hey, someone will.
It's worth the ride.
It's worth the ride. And, I think the adventure is what you make of it. So, a ride to work could be an adventure, like if you do it right. But in reality, I think like these more epic, big planned out types of adventures are really what we're getting at here, right? Like I don't want to be like so esoteric about it and be like, oh, any ride's an adventure. I mean, to me it is, or can be. But really for the scoping of this conversation, I think it's just a big ride, whether it's a single day or a multi-day. That's where you're out having fun, pushing your limits, on something that's maybe a bit organized.
I think two wheels have been used for adventures for a long time, and before motorcycles were something that everyone could afford and own, it was still popular. My great grandfather, who passed away in 2013, he married his wife in 1945, 46. He was slightly too young to kind of get a full dose of World War II. He ended up stationed in Tonga. He came back to New Zealand. They met. They were both like radio operators, like in the last final kind of days of everything, and they got married in a big joint wedding, like everyone used to do back then after the war. And they jumped on a bicycle. Both of them had bicycles. He strapped his rifle to the side, and they rode around the South Island of New Zealand for like 10 or 12 days, camping, stopping, shooting animals to eat, sustain themselves, and then keeping riding through. So. One famous, there's a thing in their memoirs where he's going riding into Christchurch, which is a city that's famous in New Zealand because they had some earthquakes a few years back.
I recall some other news from there a few years back as well.
Yeah, it was pretty shocking. That was an Australian, so Australia. I might edit that out.
That's okay because I'll remember it.
Yeah. There's memory of my great grandmother being a little bit worried about him riding into the middle of Christchurch town centre with a rifle strapped to his bike, but it was just how it was at the time. I wore an onion on my belt. It was the style at the time. So
great reference, Grandpa.
Thanks. I've been trying to work that into an episode for the whole season now. He did what most people would consider to be a wild adventure. Like no one would jump on their
Yeah.
bicycle now and do that. But I've quite regularly gone out for. It's quite common, take a Friday or a Monday additional to
Mm,
your weekend and jump on the bike on the Friday or
mm,
on the Saturday and ride and stay 2 nights. And we do these loops quite often. You start on a Friday morning, you're riding about 200 kilometers in a day, and finish, and that's kind of like 8 hours of riding because we try to do gravel roads, we try to do a mix of everything. If there's a water crossing, even better. And generally on a small bike, kind of I find 200 kilometers is a nice limit where if it's smooth roads, you can get it done quickly and have a good
mm,
rest. If it's not smooth roads, it takes you all day. Any more than that, you just start to exhaust yourself. So those are my kind of immediate thoughts when I think small bike adventure. 3 days, some off road, some on
mm.
road, whatever I can carry in my backpack or put under my seat. Under seat storage is the best. And sorry to rub it in. And
Neither of my
that's the
bike has it.
yeah. So that's what I consider to be a small bike adventure. What about you in Thailand? What was the first adventure you did? What was the first thing you did that was more than one day on a bike?
I did 2 days out to Nakanayok, Kundan Nakanayok and back.
Okay. Is it the
And
dam?
yeah, it's a big
Yeah.
pressed concrete dam out in Nakanayok on the edge
Mm,
of Khao Yai.
mm,
This was 2014, maybe
okay.
2013, 2014. That's when I had the Raider as well, which
Mm,
was not a fuel efficient bike. And I remember almost running out of gas before we got to a gas station right before the
yeah.
dam.
Yeah.
And literally, like, there were vapors in my tank.
Yeah.
And, but I mean, that was the first, like, one. I rode out with my friend Nut. And we went up, we spent the night up there, and we just crashed at like a little like guest house type of place that they have scattered around those areas. And it was like a little, you basically get like a bungalow for $10 a night out in the middle of the jungle, and you sleep in that, and next day wake up, drive off. But and that wasn't that far. I think that's just one way on that trip is less than 200 kilometers, like maybe 120
Mm,
to 150. So it wasn't a crazy ride. It was a crazy ride to do on that Raider. That wasn't the bike
yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
But you know, it that just like I wanted more instantly. It's
Yes.
like
Yes.
I remember when we left from Patumtani, and I remember once you get out like on that road past Future Park, that mall there, and everything just opens up and the high density housing sort of melts away. It was unlike anything I had done so far, and I was like, I wanted nothing but more than that, more of that.
I'm leaving the concrete jungle to find an actual jungle,
Yeah.
and I'm enjoying it immensely.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember the opposite of that happening is in when we rode into Bangkok. I'd been there before, but I
Mm,
was with two people who had never been to Bangkok before. They'd never been to, a big Asian city. A
mm,
couple of the guys had been to Australia. One guy had been to Australia, the other had been to America. But coming into Bangkok, I don't know what they expected. And a lot of people that don't know anything about Thailand and don't care about Thailand,
mm.
and then they go there into Bangkok for the first time. I hear people always say, "Wow, it's so modern."
Mm.
And I'm not sure what they were expecting. Like, have they watched a history video from the 60s where it was like 150% more canals and everyone was rolling around like wearing just traditional Thai clothing? No, there's modern people with lives living
Yeah.
their lives doing things. And I remember coming in and slowly, there's a row of shops, and then there's the townhouses, and then
Yeah.
there's a few apartment buildings, and then there's the first shopping mall, and then
Yeah.
oh my god, we're going over a massive bridge over a river, and oh my god, we can't get anywhere because motorcycles aren't allowed on these roads. But that's another story altogether.
But there's
And
still motorcycles on these roads.
yeah. So adventure can be so many things to so many different people. And you and I have both done a lot of small bike adventures.
Yeah.
What's the longest adventure you've done on a small bike, day or distance wise? Like, and I think also
I've done
preface it.
6 days is probably the longest time
Solid.
wise,
Yeah.
and I don't even know distance wise. I know what it
Mm.
will be in the near future, but
We're not
it's
talking
a
about that yet.
conversation for another time.
Yeah. The adventure that I have milked to infinity and beyond. That if you are watching this channel and you haven't heard about it, just wait. I'll talk about it sometime soon.
Get
Oh,
5
look, here we
minutes.
go. Right now. So that adventure that I keep talking about, that was only 7 days. It was only 7 days, but I think it's the
But
quantity of what we did.
600 videos.
Yeah, 650 videos. I've actually got a second channel just dedicated to videos from that trip. No, I don't. But
But that
if
is
you
a good
scroll,
idea, and it will be up in a day.
yeah, it would be a good idea. Maybe with the next one. But for me, it was my quintessential adventure. I saw people doing Vietnam
Mm,
adventures on motorcycles. Vietnam is a really easy country to ride in purely because there's bikes there just as much as there is in Thailand.
mm,
But it became easily convincible for people to do. That's not the right word, but people watch Top Gear and they saw the
mm.
Top Gear adventure from the south to the north of Vietnam. And like, if those buffoons can do it, which I do like those buffoons, but they were being buffoons.
I can think of other
If
buffoons that I was surprised survived it.
if
They
you
didn't
want to hear
finish, though.
about our,
They
our,
didn't.
our opinion on YouTubers, go back and watch an interview I did with Dana a while back, and you may understand what we're talking about. But yeah, they did this obviously comedic trip throughout Southeast Asia, and I think it opened a lot of people's eyes. You know, when I went to Vietnam for the first time in 2013, they were still advertising Easy Rider Vietnam Top Gear style trips. Like that
Okay.
was the advertisement, and the whole thing was, even if you don't know how to ride, a local Vietnamese guy will ride. You jump on the back of his bike, and he'll take you all the way. And so there's people that have that. It'll be kind of a cool life. They start in the south. They ride like a 250cc cruiser, which is pretty big for them. And they go from south to north. And I saw those adventures and thought, okay, cool, that's nice. But what about going across into another country or somewhere else that's less explored? And of course, I had reasons to want to go to Thailand as well. So I just made Malaysia involved because it's close by. And
Yeah.
I think crossing a border on a bike, something that I'd never done. Crossing a border, I hadn't really done that much in my life at all. You know, I'm from New Zealand. If I cross our border, I just go into the ocean.
Yeah.
So going from one country to another was huge, and riding in excess of 300 to 400 kilometers per day, which is stupid, by the way.
I've done. I sort of enjoy that, but like in with distance from that memory, like I gotta let the saddle sores kind of fade, and then I enjoy those trips where I push like 300, 400, 500 kilometers a day.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a time and a place for riding really long distance, and I think it's the caliber of people you're around as well.
Yeah.
When you're riding small bikes for a long adventure, you either do it with a couple of people or a group. And if you're doing it with a group, like I don't like riding with big groups unless I know what the people ride like. Back in the day, I'd ride with anyone and everyone, but I've had too many close calls on the sides of mountains with large drops down hundreds of meters, and I just enjoy being alive, if I'm entirely honest with you. So I do kind of like have a safety aspect when it comes to those adventures. But then you've got people like Kevin and Michael, who were the Swedish dudes that I helped out when they came to New Zealand, and they did stuff like ride through Pakistan and ride through the contested parts of Pakistan where you have to get a military escort, and it's just a Toyota Hilux full of dudes with AK-47s going 130 kilometers an hour in front of you. And he was on a Grom that could do 90. And so he's being left behind in this war-torn region. And he's like, it's the best time I've had. It was really fun. I really enjoyed it. We had to ride for days and days and days straight. And he's shown me some footage. You know, they got to some random town and they weren't really allowed out. But they went out. And he's riding his bike and he turns his head down this alleyway and there's like a car burning in the middle of the alleyway. And you're like, oh, yeah, cool. Where's the insurgents? What's happening next? But they had an incredible time, and for them, the most dangerous things they did were the most fun. So I think there's a lot to be said. Who, you saw Ed Much. Can you tell me about your experience of learning about him?
So I think the first videos of his I had seen, I believe he was in Alaska or Canada. And it was definitely like a cold area. And he was with a chick at the time. And
Rachel.
they were riding across America or across Canada or something. And like I just like he's got this sense of humor that is just perfectly befitting to someone doing something as ridiculous as driving a Honda C90 across anything.
Just to interrupt there, if anyone's watched an Ed Much video to quantify that, we all know what Ed Much's buttocks look like.
Yes.
Every single one of us.
Yes.
So you saw this guy, and that trip was meant to be the most northern accessible road in North America
Yeah.
to the tip of South America, and he did most of it. So you saw then, and what were you watching? Where were you? Were you in Thailand?
Yeah, I was in Thailand when I first saw him.
Hmm.
And yeah, I fell in love with the first time I saw his humor,
Buttocks?
his wit, his
Oh,
buttocks. Actually, I think for me the most famous buttocks scene I remember is him getting a flat in the salt flats in South America
yes,
and
yeah,
getting completely naked, less his helmet,
yeah,
and like just hanging out there to change his tire.
yeah. He actually asked me to proof watch that, and he was like, "Please make sure that there's no like nut shots." And so I had to like sit there and pause and zoom. I was a bit didn't find anything. I was a bit disappointed. He'd done a good job, but so
Yeah,
he's
but he's a
done that.
legend.
So,
Yeah, I mean he's done
yeah,
so much, and like now he's driving a mini Jeep across of Utah,
I mean
and
he finished that adventure in real life a long time ago. He's
yeah,
also, which is another conversation entirely. He's mastered the art of long form videos with sporadic releases.
yeah, which is where I'm trying to get my channel as well, and
Yeah.
but he's also like I think he's like a boat engineer or something on cruise ships,
Yeah,
or
he's an engineer in general,
yeah,
and he just ends up working for shipping companies as an engineer on the boat because I think they give short stints. He doesn't have to
okay,
dedicate himself to a full time job for a whole year or 2 years of his life,
yeah,
and you get reasonably cashed up
yeah,
because while you're on the ship, everything's supplied and paid for.
yeah,
So he'll do like 6 weeks to 2 months on a ship, get
mm.
off, live for 6 months, and then do that again.
Does he live in the U.S. full time?
He does now. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. 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 He's It's interesting. His latest video, he's getting a little bit snarky about the way the world is,
yeah,
and like I really like it much. Like I message him quite a bit. I've talked to him since I lived in Thailand. For me, I don't like anyone's content getting like that opinionated. Like if it's
yeah,
entertainment, entertain me. Don't tell me how you feel about the world. I've got
mm.
my own feelings about the world, and the funny thing for me was he was saying that I've had to leave the UK to be able to ride like this because where else can I ride in the UK in big wide open spaces? And I was like, yes, that's true. There are trails closing down all over the world, and it's a sad thing.
Mm.
However, it could also be something to do with the fact that the UK is 2.5% the size of the USA.
yeah,
There's just more spaces to ride in. So he's done this mini Jeep adventure. I found out about him 2013.
yeah,
I bought his documentary Malaysia to UK,
okay,
and he flew his bike or shipped his bike to Kuala Lumpur. He did it all with members from Horizons Unlimited Adventures, which is an old motorcycle forum, adventure forum,
okay,
which now has a big Facebook group. I'll add you to it if I haven't actually, because it's pretty
okay,
interesting. And he used members from there. So, like in Malaysia, he met up with a member there and stayed with them. And then throughout the trip, he'd meet different people from that group
nice,
and hang out with them. So, it's really interesting to see that part of his trip because I was living in a part of the world he had ridden through.
mm.
There's famous scenes of him, with guns slung over his bike in Cambodia. He married his bike. He tried to marry his bike at Bang Rak Ampur in Bangkok. They wouldn't let him do the paperwork, and he was really pissed off. And he did have that comedic element back then as well. Like I remember there's this big music montage that he'd been filming throughout the whole adventure,
Mm.
and eventually, he edits it together 6 months, a year later,
Mm.
and he'd just been filming the parts of the song that he was singing along the way and kind of edited it all together. And it was really impressive to watch that as well. So I think he definitely inspired me. Nathan Millward.
Mm.
Millward. I'm going to go ahead with that. He's another Brit, and it seems like they have a penchant for adventure. I guess it's because when you live in a tiny, tiny, tiny island in a cold, wet part of the world
Yeah.
that has like 4.5 days of summer a year.
And crappy food.
Yeah, the desire. It's true. The desire to not even going to contest that. Come at me. What are you going to do about it? Throw some mushy peas at me? Pour some salt on your
The
food.
mushy peas.
British people find salt spicy. Like, come on, man. I mean, it's Yeah. I remember watching this. I'm going off topic. I remember watching this British show that's about couples going to each other's wedding, and there was this lovely like Indian couple, and then all these white couples getting married, and they all went to the Indian couple's wedding, and they had just like a mild like butter chicken or something,
Yeah.
and the like traditional Brits were going like, oh, I don't know what is this, like I don't know what this food, I don't want to eat. Why can't they have a roast chicken and some potatoes? It's like, you bland, boring mother.
I'm having like Uncle Roger flashbacks in my head, like making fun of
Yeah.
Jamie Oliver.
Yeah, oh, that's great. Yeah.
Jamie Olive Oil.
If you like Uncle Roger, go to Malaysia, because that's what all the uncles are like in all the mamak restaurants.
Yes.
You stand there trying to order food. If you don't know what you want, hurry up.
Yeah.
And you're just like, whoa, shit, okay.
It's a high pressure situation.
It is. It really is. I don't have all day. I remember going to Singapore and trying to order, and I was like, oh, can I have number this on the menu? He was like, no, only have number 1, number 4. I'm like, okay. And he's like, hurry up. I'm like, sorry, uncle. It's like, oh, just whatever. He's like, no, you choose. I'm like, oh, God, I'm just having an argument with an uncle in the middle of Singapore. Not sure.
And then you're like, the food's not even as good as Malaysia.
Anyway, after insulting England for the last 5 minutes, I would like to talk about how wonderful Nathan Millward is, who's from England.
Yes.
He lived in Australia, and Australia has a big postie bike culture, and postie bikes are Honda CTs, CT110s, and CT90s, and they were adopted by the Postal Service. And same in New Zealand. They'd put 2 big panniers on the back of that massive rack that comes standard on the CT, and they'd be used for 45 to 50,000 kilometres by Australian Post, and then they'd be sent off into a second-hand auction. And so now it's harder to get decent versions of them, because they've replaced them with what's called the NBC 110, which Thai people know as the Honda Super Cub before the Super Cub came out. So the 110cc version of the Super Cub that you can get at a normal Honda shop. It's basically the same frame, same bike. He was like running out of time in Australia, wasn't sure what to do, needed to go home, so he decided to buy this bike and ride. I think it's an amazing story if you read his book or watch his videos about it, because I think he called it riding home on a pizza bike or something like that. It was one of his YouTube videos.
Pizza bike, that's the one I saw, I think.
He ended up, I hope we're not confusing him with someone else, because I know other people have done this too. He ended up having massive issues with his bike, like not even a week into his trip. I think it was lunching itself, the engine was starting to die, and he ended up going to a place called Lambda Motorcycles, which is run by a guy that I know these days, who was an apprentice back in the day, rebuilding engines there. And there's a photo in his book of this guy who would eventually become one of the company owners, and he bought a brand new bike from them with a big auxiliary tank. You could fit like these XR200 tanks in the middle there, and that would have like an extra 5-6 litres of fuel. So he rode that all the way up through Indonesia, right through into Malaysia, into Thailand. Eventually, rode it all the way back to London. And I think people that do those kind of adventures are really looking for something, those really, really long adventures. Maybe looking for themselves, maybe not. But I know for a fact that when he finished that adventure, he tried to get back to a normal life in the UK and couldn't. And so he went back and rode to Alaska and did a whole bunch of other stuff as well.
It does change you being on the road. And I think regardless, big bike, small bike, bicycle, unicycle, whatever, having an adventure of a trip of that length where you're supporting yourself and, you're really, pushing your limits on a daily basis does help unlock something within you. And I could see it is troubling to get to a 9 to 5 sort of desk job life after you've been on the open road, regardless of, one day or, 1,000-day trip. There's something that changes in you.
I completely agree. You're really having to face who you are as a person, whether you knew who that was or not, because the only person you've got to rely on is yourself. Most people that are doing these trips, especially on small bikes, they don't have unlimited budgets. They're not sitting there with millions of dollars in the bank account. They're making it work for a very small amount. And that means living on the cheap, eating on the cheap, fixing your bike yourself if at all possible. So it's one of those things that, yeah, once you've finished those kind of adventures, what is real life?
Mm.
You know, that was an arguably better version of your existence. However, it's not sustainable to do unless you can find giant donations and money coming from the clouds or something. But I guess that's a good segue into Helmet Head, really.
Well, I mean, yeah, it is, but I mean, I want to say, like, even you look at someone who I would argue is probably the most successful adventurer in small bikes, in Ed March, and he still works to support his adventures, right? He's still taking jobs,
Yeah.
like you said, as a mechanic, as an engineer on a boat, because that allows him to live that life and fund his adventures. So it's not a direct monetizable thing in itself, right? If your focus is
Yeah.
the adventure,
And it doesn't need to be. There will be a whole subset, and you and I always think of everything with a content brain because that's who we are. There's people out there that do these trips that have absolutely no interest in taking a single photo. They just want to do the trip. Like, if they do, they share it to their family, you know. Kevin, I've seen all of his footage that he took when he rode almost all the way around the world before it was killed by COVID. The adventure, not him. And he has, like, I said, give me your raw footage. I would love to make a documentary about your adventure. He's like, oh, I'm okay. And I'm like, okay, sweet, that's fine, and that's okay. And I think it's important to realize that people have done adventures on motorcycles, you know, globally for a long time
that no one knows about.
Yeah, and I mean, there's someone that I really like is a Japanese guy called Kenichi Fujiwara. He only speaks Japanese, and I only found out about his motorcycle adventures post them actually being completed because he did them in the 90s. He rode like a gorilla around the world, and he rode like a Yamaha electric scooter in the 90s.
Nice.
Like around a lot of the world. And he would just go slow and do it all by himself. And he would document it, and he's only started posting about it in like the last 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
So he did these adventures in the 90s. He did longer adventures than Ed March has ever done.
Yeah.
And multiple different versions of them. And he just didn't really share it. And then you've got people like Helmet Head, who is, if you don't watch his videos, go and give them a try because they appeal to a lot of people. He's got a really good community for the size of his channel.
Yeah.
He should have more subscribers, as should you and I. But it's
all in due time, right? I mean, the almighty algorithm bestows on us manna when it will.
Yeah, and it has for me lately with Instagram, but nothing else.
Yeah.
Which has been really odd, but I'm not complaining at all. It's nice to see some not recognition, but some results from the efforts, I guess. Helmet Head is a UK guy. He has a YouTube channel, which I'll go and have a look how many subscribers he has now. He is riding around the world, but he's not riding around the world in the traditional manner.
Yes.
Most people that are riding around the world will just go.
Yeah.
They've saved up for years and years and years, but to do that, you know, some people sell houses, they sell all of their worldly possessions, and they don't know what they're going to come back to. But that's not realistic for a lot of us, is it?
Definitely not. Definitely not.
I mean,
I like the way he's doing it. I like the way that he describes it, and that, you know, he's still making a living, and he's taking, I don't know what his job is, whatever he's doing that allows him to take like 2 weeks off at a stretch to go drive a leg of this world trip is pretty epic. But
so he started in the UK now, and I think he's in he's in Portugal. Yeah. So he rode to France, came back, worked, went from France through more of France, came back, went to Portugal. Rode to Portugal, came back and worked again, and that's his way of doing it. Which, I mean, I'd love to fast forward to the end of his trip so I could watch it all like one after another, because that's the kind of content consumer I am. I want to watch it all in one go.
You want that binge method?
I do. He's got 7,930 subscribers as of filming, and he's got real good community engagement with those nearly 8,000 subscribers. He's getting about 1,000 views per video within a couple of days of them being released, and that's more than me with 10,000 subscribers at the moment. And that's because he's created this big community of people who follow his adventure. He's like jokes around, and he plays into the whole British thing. He calls himself Lord Helmet Head. He does all these other different adventures, not just on small bikes as well. He's not one of the people that limit themselves to small bikes. There's videos of him reviewing Harley Davidsons. There's videos of him riding old BMWs. I think that's a BMW. Anyway, he's riding bikes of all sizes, but his preferred mode of transport for riding around the world is a Honda Monkey 125, which is heavily loaded. Yeah. His one's got a lot of stuff on it though, and he recently came into an issue where every time he changed into second gear, it would chatter really horribly. And I actually got in touch with him because that was the exact same issue that Kevin had with his engine here in New Zealand. Changing to second, it would chatter horribly, and basically the cam chain tensioner on the Honda 125 horizontal engines, it's unable to withstand excessive wide open days for very, very long periods, and they will munch themselves eventually. A guy that I'm going to be sharing soon, I've already had an interview with him, Tom on a budget. His he got 80,000 Ks out of his cam chain tensioner, which I thought was quite crazy because I think I did my big ball kit. It's got to be on the cusp of usability with its mechanical strength, because in a 125 engine it lasts forever. I've gone to 143. It's lunched itself within about 700 kilometers. So it's right at the limit of its use. And I think when you're doing an adventure,
there must be
like
an upgraded version of it somewhere.
There are, yeah, which I'm going for now. You can get non-rubber based cam chain rollers and things like that that improve it. But those are the kind of things that are interesting when people are riding long distance on small bikes and having adventures and doing these around the world trips.
Yeah, I've not run into that with my Grom, so luckily.
No, you haven't. I would argue because you haven't got it loaded with a top box and two panniers that are completely full the whole time. 2 jerry cans, I think I can see here. And the engine's had some modifications. You know, he's got an aftermarket air intake. He's done a few things to it. So
my engine's is stock.
It's stock. Yeah. Stock rocks. Oh yeah, man. I could get on that. Oh no, where is mine? It's gone. I dropped it. Damn it. So yeah, he's doing a really interesting adventure, and I hope we can talk about around the world on a small bike with Kevin coming up in an episode.
That'd be cool.
Soon.
Yeah.
But adventures don't have to be around the world, you know.
No.
I think those guys have done incredible adventures, or are doing incredible adventures, and it's amazing to see what humans are capable of with a little bit of dedication and a little bit of insanity tied up into the mix.
You can adventure around your neighborhood, right? I mean,
you really can.
Yeah, you can. There's a great guy. He's not a small bike creator, but he's an Australian, Bo Miles, and he does this whole thing about local adventuring, like backyard adventuring. And, hiking, kayaking, stuff like that. But, I mean, the same is true for a small bike. And, your backyard just gets a little bit bigger. But, like for me, my backyard could be Kauai, right? Nakanayoke, where I first went on my first bike adventure, was my backyard, essentially. I mean, there's also the other side of that. Like, you did something I've always wanted to do, which is a border crossing, like Malaysia to Thailand. Because I have connections to Malaysia and Thailand. I live here, but I used to work there, and I love that country as well. And like that whole idea of a border crossing is really cool. I mean, you could even do Singapore into I don't know if you actually can bring the bikes across, but you probably have to get a Malaysian bike, go to Singapore, then cross back.
Yeah. There's so much that can be done, and I think you're right. It's not where you go. It's your attitude while you are going there. If you are considering it to be an adventure, then it is. And you're right. I kind of take back what I said at the start, that I consider it to be a multi-day thing. You're so right. The more I think about it, I could wake up, early one morning before the sun rises, jump on my bike, do a massive loop, and end up home again at 5 p.m. That's still an adventure, where on a small bike, you're actually lucky enough that you can usually see what's going past.
You can enjoy that. That is one of the beauties of the small bike, is you're going fast enough to have fun, slow enough to enjoy it.
Yeah, you really are. Sometimes I do wish for a higher top speed on those really, really hot days when I just want a bit more airflow.
A little bit more airflow, yeah.
I'll make do.
Been there, done that. I can think one of the other things that's really interesting about riding a small bike too is the ability to just do it and not be worried about can I handle the bike on this terrain, because for most of us, handling a 125, 150cc displacement bike is not that big a deal. And you never feel overwhelmed. Whereas I've ridden leader bikes, and you feel overwhelmed and out of your skill set very quickly. And
Yeah, it's
that's
very true.
tough. Yeah.
The thing with big bikes for me is like, hey, I've got my life in my literal right hand here.
Mm.
Like, I just twist a little bit further and death's imminent. And I'm just not a fan of that. I like being in control. Tom had a really good way to describe it. You know, he's like, if the amount of adventures he's done on his Honda Wave 125, if he had had even a 500cc Honda and had dropped it in some of the mud tracks that he's been on, there's no way he would have been able to lift that bike up again. And then you're stuck waiting for someone else because it's slippery and you need two people to support it. And what's the point at that stage?
I often just parking will lift up my Grom and move it into the spot just to get better fit. So
yes, yeah.
You know, it's not a hard bike to manage, but I mean, if you can't lift a 500cc, what are you doing? Don't stop skipping gym day.
He's no. He's talking about So he was riding in Cambodia. I think there are some pictures of it, and it was like a track that's basically this thick in mud, and there's just puddles all through it. And he's like, I was slipping over lifting up my bike because you just can't stand up, you can't get a solid footing. Yeah. And he's like, how I can't even imagine what this would be like on anything a little bit bigger. And that's an interesting, like, a topic for another day. But I think we kind of have covered it in our previous episode where what is a small bike. But you know, manufacturers are out there saying that a small bike is a Honda CBX 500 or CB 500X, and those bikes can't even be ridden by people with short stature unless you get like a lowering link in the
starter bikes.
Because, starter bikes that are almost too big for like 80% of the world's population.
Well, also like a small Harley would be like what, a 900cc?
Yeah, I mean they did the Street 500 for a couple of years, but I don't think that counted.
Yeah.
It's it was very small, but it's I do hope that as time goes on, there's more opportunity for people to get different small bikes and use them on adventures. But like you say, man, you could literally use anything. It could be anything. It could be the cheapest bike on the market. It could be a 50-year-old, whatever. Just go.
Yeah, just go.
Just go.
Getting out of the car and onto the bike, out of the car onto the bike is the first step. And it doesn't matter what that bike is. Like, we love small bikes. I mean, the medium that you choose to paint your adventure with is up to you. But do it.
Agree. Like, the key message we're trying to get across here with this large, long waffle is that anything is an adventure. Just get out there and do it.
Yeah. And of course, do it on a Honda Grom, not a
And if
Wave.
you do it, make videos and release them so I can have something else to watch.
Right, exactly. But yeah,
a bit selfish, but
I think going about like the style you do it, like I have a hard time. I like Helmet Head, everything he's doing. I like his humor a bit. I do have a hard time following his story because I feel like I can't invest in the story for some reason.
Because it's.
I was gonna say, but the same token, when Ed releases a video months apart or a year apart in some cases, I still feel the continuity to the previous work.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because he released his final episode of his Alaska to Argentina video 3-ish years after it was finished.
Yeah.
He'd finished, that's how long it took for all the episodes to come out. And I messaged him at the time and said, wow, it's amazing to see it. That must have been, a couple of years ago now? And he's like, no, man, I think it was 2017 I finished.
Wow.
And he's been back doing other things for so long. So, yeah, there is an art. I think I'm really excited for, a future day where I can sit there and go to Helmet Head's channel and look at a playlist from start to finish.
Yeah.
I will do that. I will binge it because that's the kind of content consumer, like I say, that I am. I just like watching it all in one go. I get bitterly disappointed when a series ends that I love, or I'm that kind of guy.
Well, that's the nice thing about motorcycle adventures. There's always another.
Yeah.
And I have the feeling that I have the feeling that Helmet Head's going to have a lot of side quests that he accomplishes, like during this around the world trip, because of the way he's doing it. I feel like it's going to and you know this, when you do long, like multi-day trips, your energy levels, peak and valley, right? They wane. And I think he's probably negating a lot of that by having the opportunity to go home, be around people, work, then come back to his bike, park somewhere, jump on it, and drive. And I think that's going to unlock the energy for a lot of side quests, like things that he's going to do that he probably would have said, like, I just don't have the energy or time for because of this trip. So let me just skip this now and maybe I'll come back someday. And he's not going to have that issue because he's going to be so fresh. Like, I want to see that. I'm going to do that.
He's allowed to have that. He's allowing himself to have that build up that most people have once before their adventure.
Yeah.
He's having that every 2 or 3 weeks. That's amazing. Yeah, it's one way to think about it. One adventure that I think everyone that's watching this should go and watch. I will preface it by saying it can be a bit pretentious at times, but it's definitely worth watching it from start to finish. I really, really like it, and it's not just motorcycles. It's a whole bunch of different things, but. Charlie Blouin and Ewan McGregor, it's not that, but when they rode around the world on bikes, they went from London to New York on motorcycles. That was cool. After that, Charlie Blouin by himself did an adventure called By Any Means, and it's from John O'Groats at the top of Scotland, I believe, all the way to Sydney, by any means necessary except plane. So he travels across land through this myriad of countries, some countries that you can't even go to now, and they were in, I think they're in Georgia as Georgia and Russia kicked off in 2008. Like, that's happening in the background. You can hear artillery going off and stuff like that. They do this adventure from the top of the world to the bottom of the world by any means necessary, and for me, it's a really good way to get yourself into the mindset of what a constant adventure would be, albeit, yes, they have a big budget behind them. They've got support. They've got an entire team back in the UK organising everything for them, but they still experience these frustrations. They get frustrated with each other. There's one point where they have to kind of part ways and do different parts of the trip. The cameraman and the manager of the trip and the guy that's doing it all kind of hate each other for a few weeks there. And it's a really, really good adventure to watch. For me, just because it's kind of like I probably will never get the chance to do something to that effect, because that trip would have easily cost maybe $200,000 or $300,000. But it's amazing that it has been documented, and I think we're lucky in this day and age that we can watch all these kind of things. Before Ed March went on an adventure, the only motorcycle video he would watch was Mondo Enduro by Vince Austin. That was like the first motorcycle around the world video, and it's from the 80s, and it's like 60 minutes long, and everyone like pays homage to it like it's the start of filming your motorcycle global adventures. And I went and watched it about a year ago, and I was a little bit underwhelmed because I'm watching it through the eyes of someone who's been spoilt by excessive motorcycle content.
We definitely are fortunate that the community is so passionate and so willing to film and share their adventures. And I take inspiration from a lot of people's adventures. Like when I'm planning one of mine, right, I have, of course, my things I want to see and routes I want to take. But like, I look to like Ed March and see like, how did what did he do to compose this? How did he put this together? And then also look at them, like, what were some of the challenges these people encountered?
Yeah. It's going on that journey with them without actually physically going. And I really enjoy that because as much as I'd like to be adventuring every day, that's not my reality right now. It may be one day, someday. But it's not right now. So I'll live through other people. It's fine. I am going to be doing a cool adventure, which is only going to be 10 days of riding, but we're going to start in Kuala Lumpur and finish in Kuala Lumpur, go up across the border into southern Thailand and come back again. So I will be sure to make at least another 600 videos about that. Just stay tuned. If you're watching this, a solid year or two after it's uploaded, there will be lots of content.
At least 250 videos by that now.
Yeah,
at that point, by a year later.
And the way we're trying to,
go ahead. You say the way you're what?
The way we're recording this, we're not trying not to date it. Yeah. So hopefully it's still watchable in a couple of years' time.
I may have something coming up in the near future as well that will generate some content.
I'm jealous. I won't be able to make it for that one, but please, the modifications you're doing to your motorcycle, please leave it that way before so I can get a chance to
ride it.
I'm going to stop talking there, but yeah, I'll give it away. But get out there and have an adventure. That's what we're trying to say. I think we'll leave it. Fun. Yeah, we'll leave it there. This has been a really fun conversation, and nearly the end of the season. It's flown by.
Yeah, it's been a blast.
It has. It really has. And it won't be the end. Thank you so much so far for joining us on the Small Bike Stuff podcast. when I see you next, which is not anytime very soon, but we should do some of these in person someday.
Absolutely. Actually, we should plan for like if we can bang out a whole season sometime in person. It'd be a blast.
It would be really, really fun.
Yeah.
It'd be really cool. We just need to figure out a way to do it while riding motorcycles, if that makes sense. We just need someone in front of us filming us while we talk to each other on bikes. I'm gonna plan off camera.
We'll make it happen. We'll make it happen.
Yeah.
Technology's a beautiful thing.
Thanks everyone for watching. If you've liked this episode, please subscribe and check out all the other content that I've got on here. Watch Dana's videos on Idea Studio BKK. There's a couple of incredible bike adventures there. And that's about it. We'll see you next time.
Later.